this armed group that was surrounded and that shot the Kosovo police on last Sunday, were very well armed. According to National Security Council spokesperson in Washington, D.C., Mr. Kirby, they had a type of weaponry armament that was sufficient to start a little war. Unfortunately, we've had a peace process of achieving a lasting settlement of normalization of relations between Serbia and Kosovo earlier this year, and a signing of a breakthrough agreement based on a French-German proposal. This proposal was signed by or agreed to by both sides. However, it's clear that Belgrade had no intention to fulfill it. Unfortunately, they refused to actually put the signature on paper. And since then, we had a steady rise of provocations of the type that you've seen in Crimea earlier, or in Croatia and Bosnia even earlier, of the type of operations inside Kosovo with the paramilitaries, with provocations. And now lastly, this Sunday, with a terrorist attack, and it was called so by both US and EU, where one Kosovo policeman was shot dead, and 3 gunmen or terrorists were also eliminated by Kosovo police in coordination with NATO and EU police forces here in Kosovo. So now things have gotten rather serious, from slow escalation to an actual, violence where people are dying.
Yeah, you mentioned Crimea there, and I know that Wagner forces are present in Serbia at the moment. How likely is this to turn into a situation where Serbia invades Kosovo?
Well, the fact is that these terrorists, or this armed group that was surrounded and that shot the Kosovo police on last Sunday, were very well armed. According to National Security Council spokesperson in Washington, D.C., Mr. Kirby, they had a type of weaponry armament that was sufficient to start a little war, which would threaten not only Kosovo, but even the wider international forces here. Really hundreds of weaponry, automatic guns, RPGs.
So the word in a number of newspaper articles I've read is that these are weapons that could only have come from the Serbian government.
Indeed, if you have 30 paramilitaries which are well trained, well equipped with a Serbian armament and weaponry, with even a type of armored vehicles which are usually found in little armies, they can only operate with the permission, with explicit knowledge, if not direct involvement and command from Belgrade. And what is even worse, Kosovo now published footage of drones in which one of the leaders, or the main leader of this group, is actually Mr. Milan Radojic, already sanctioned by US government for all sorts of nefarious shenanigans, but now also by his own admittal, he's a leader of this group. And this is a man who is very close to President Vučić of Serbia, his close associate, he controls the political landscape both in Kosovo and has a strong influence in Serbia. A type of person that would not be able to operate in a very autocratic country like Serbia without cooperation from the government.
And Patrick, can I just ask you, with the new government in Czechoslovakia as well, I mean, what are the wider repercussions of this sort of Russification, if you will, of that region, which is where it feels it's leaning?
Well, I think it's quite worrisome that Russia, which is trying to expand the focal points of tension and potential conflict from the Ukrainian front lines to elsewhere in the world, in Africa, in Sahel, Balkans, somehow is managing that purely because I think the EU and the US response, but primarily EU, has been quite insufficient here in Balkans. A type of appeasement policy was seen in last months towards Serbia, despite the fact that the Serbian government has been coordinating its move with Moscow. The first thing that President Vučić did after this last crisis was not meet EU ambassadors or British ambassador. He met Bortsan Harchenko, the Russian ambassador in Belgrade. In this day and age, during a genocidal crisis in Ukraine and a war, to have a type of very close relationship of an EU contender like Serbia doesn't forebode well. I'm quite sorry that we are seeing a rather muted response in Brussels to what may be yet a very existential challenge here in Western Balkans vis-a-vis Russia and its partner Serbia.
Well, thank you very much for elaborating on that worrying situation.